Hey, good morning, sports fans, and welcome back to Hobby Hotline on for collectors. I am Dan. I have my own channel right there, and I'm also one of the four collectors. And I am very pleased to work for, I guess, the first time, Uncle Rich and Brody back from last week. How are you doing, Uncle Rich?
Hey, we're basically snowed in here in the Dallas Fort Worth area. So I am just sitting here enjoying a couple days where I've done absolutely nothing.
Brody, are you in Texas?
No, I'm in Illinois, so it's
Illinois,
I
okay.
not snowed in as much, but yesterday we had a wind chill of -37, so not really up to too much as well. Just kind of chilling.
Well,
Yeah, I woke up.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't use the word snowed in, but we're weathered in because there's no snow yet, but it's
Yeah, yeah. I woke up this morning and checked the temperature, and it's a balmy, feels like -5 here in New York City. The actual temperature is like 11 or something. So,
where
sadly,
in New
my
York,
wife has
where
to
in New
go
York
out.
City are you? Where in New York City are you?
I'm right in Manhattan.
Because I grew up in North Jersey. That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking.
I know. I actually I'm going to make reference to Jersey a little bit later on the show, but before we get to that, I want to just say hello to the chat. Here is my buddy and for collector colleague John, 3D80s kid, who is in the West Coast, which means it's 8 in the morning out there. What are you doing up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, John? Mad City Brew is here. Good morning, Orlando. Orlando was up late last night, as was I, on the Because I'm Carlos show. I know Orlando was in the chat. I actually was on the screen. Oh, there we go. He's on his walk. Awesome. I've been watching those videos. Orlando does these live streams as he walks and talks about the hobby, and it's terrific. Confluence Sports Cards, who used to be Ruben Snyder, is here. Hello, Larry Gitlin. Hello, Peter B. Thank you for your comment on my most recent video. Peacemaker Cards. Dave, how are you? What is that? 3 degrees this morning on Cape Cod. Ooh, I'm a big fan of Cape Cod. How are you, Peter B? 85 degrees. Oops. Scotty I. Zach Pierce. Hello. How are you? Also was in the BIC chat last night. Foul Ball, how are you? Hammer 44, again, another in the BIC chat. How are you? Philly Joe and Southern Lane Cards. I am not familiar with you, but good morning, sir. And so that's our chat right now. Oh, Chris C, hello. And we got one more. There we go. Penny Sleever. Oh, Kudalev. I'm not gonna. Good morning, everyone. I'm not gonna keep going through everyone, but so we have some topics that are on the screen there.
Cooter is about an hour from me right now, except in this weather, it would be about 6 hours.
Yeah, right. we put together some topics. I actually did some research on the first one. The reason I actually raised this topic, it's hobby shop closings, which has happened, but it's also related to the issue that Uncle Rich, you'll have some input on this. It's the allocations by Fanatics. I saw a video by a gentleman by the name of Brandon. Brandon's Baseball Cards 8637. I would tell everybody that they should go subscribe. He's a collector of unopened, and he talked about the closure of the OPC Superstore in Texas, which, Rich, you might be familiar with, which sells primarily unopened product, and they closed their doors, and they announced it, I guess, this week. So that was one hobby shop that closed. I have a list of others. Hobby Villa in Kentucky, Eagles Barbecue, Eagles Baseball Card Shop in Kent, Washington, Sports Card Fantasies in Santa Maria, and one that's a hobby shop and not really a card shop, and a place that I've been to, and you may have also been to, Rich, is a place called Magnolia in Central or South Jersey. They used to have like trains and all sorts of stuff, and it's like one of those hobby shops that's existed for like 40 years in Jersey, and they're gone. So hobby shops have been closing. Whether or not that is attributable to Fanatics cutting off new shops or reducing the allocations for existing shops remains to be seen, and whether this continues as a trend remains to be seen. Brody, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I don't think it's too surprising, and I can't speak from each shop, but I think one example I saw of this is when the new Topps basketball Chrome came out a couple months ago. They were emailing shops to use the like gold logo, man. I think this is just something where Fanatics is kind of steering the ship a little bit, and I think a lot of hobby shops like really have to try and do, if Fanatics suggests something, it's not really a suggestion. Like, to keep your good allocations, you got to try your best to make like 100% do it and try to even do it better. But there's also so many hobby shops that have opened recently that it's not too surprising because not everybody can stay open, obviously.
Rich, what do you think?
Well, first, the one that started our conversation in our chat was actually one you didn't mention. It's a store here in Frisco, Texas, about 20 minutes from me, called Mason's.
Uh-huh.
And Mason's had a long Facebook post, and they posted in the thing how they lost their allocations a few months ago. And I guess maybe their lease ran out at this point, and they've just made that difficult decision to close. And they used to get all the products. Mason's is a more unique situation, when my old synagogue show, when it was like a 3-ring circus, they actually would set up at that show. They were really nice people. It was a husband and wife owning the store. But Mason's also has a situation when they opened in Frisco, they were the only store in Frisco. Now they're basically 3 stores in Frisco within 10 minutes of each other. There's one called The Beast, which is part of the I'll call it the waxed empire of stores, where they're in the mid double digits, 15, 16, 17, and there's more in their pipeline they want to open. And there's also a store called Cards in a Box, which is located in what they call the Star in Frisco, which is a big touristy area, which doesn't sound strange for something in the middle of downtown, but it's where the Cowboys team does their practicing and does a lot of stuff, and it's like a corporate headquarters. So a lot of people get tours come to that area and get tours, and they do a ton of transient business. And then Mason's is about 5 or 10 minutes away on the other side of town. And so they've become the third team in a 3-man race, and Fanatics, for very good reasons, does not want to overload an area with stores. You mentioned you're in Manhattan. Manhattan is so large, has so many people that come in and out. You could probably put 3 stores in that area, and they'd probably draw different people. Where Mason's was, they weren't. And that's a little bit of a more unique circumstance. But there's also the problem with so many people getting into this, where Fanatics is overloaded with people asking to get in. And they're trying as much as possible not to have anybody new come in until they sort out what they have. And they do have certain requirements, and they do want you to honor, as Brody says, certain requests. And it's a very tricky situation. And I know a few years ago when Panini, and you referenced my friend Tom Salem at OPG Baseball Cards, who I've known for more than 30 years. Yeah. I mean, when the Dallas Card Show was the biggest game in the country, Tom would actually come to the Dallas Card Show because he couldn't get anything from Panini, and he'd actually use the area behind my table as his staging area as he purchased stuff, and he just keep coming back and forth. And I said, no, I know him forever. He's fine, and it was good. But the point was, for Tom's business, it became very much of an unopened business. And if he lost his Fanatics thing, then he's not going to be able to sell any new product in the store. And for a lot of stores, selling new product is obviously the key. And I also want to bring up something interesting. DFW is now a little bit underserved with a store where you can buy singles. A lot of these stores have value boxes they put out. They have showcases. But it's not a place where you can either finish sets or you can collect in a reasonably manner thing, cards of Luka, Dirk Nowitzki, Cooper Flagg, Emmett, Troy Aikman, C.D. Lamb. They're not all together in one place. They're usually just football cards put together or basketball cards put together. And this sounds counterintuitive, but I wonder if a store based on singles cards, reasonably well organized, you don't have to have them in numerical order, except for vintage, but reasonably well organized teams for the more modern cards, superstar players, and then numerical for vintage. I wonder if a store like that would actually work in DFW, because that is an underserved area. So I think you can even make an opportunity for a store if you lose your allocation, but you have to think about what you want to do, because you're not going to have the people coming in to spend the money for unopened boxes like it's nothing. You have to start thinking of ways to work around that. It's difficult. And if your business is based on that, then you've got problems. If Rob Veras of Burbank lost his box allocations tomorrow, it would hurt his business. He's got a wonderful thing. He's so well known for singles cards. I bet you he could survive if he lost his allocations tomorrow. And that's what I mean by diversification of what you do in your store.
I mean, excellent points. Absolutely. I feel like there were three things that came up in the chat right in a row that were all things that I had been thinking of. One is from Chris from Missouri, and I saw this in some of the literature I was reading, is the fear that Fanatics wants to cut out the middleman, and Fanatics wants to go directly to breakers or directly to customers, and that the hobby shop is in the way of Fanatics making more money. And here's another one: is that are there too many shops now? It's almost like, the boom in the hobby in the late 80s, early 90s, there were shops on every corner pretty much, and that couldn't sustain itself. Is that an issue that we're going to be dealing with? Is that hobby shops are opening more of it now because the hobby is doing very well? Someone made a reference to vape and pot shops, but I was thinking more along the lines of the craft beer brew boom in like the 90s, and then again like maybe 10 years ago, is that everybody had a craft brewery, and those all sort of closed. So when you glut the market with a product because the product is hot, not everybody is going to succeed. And then the last one is from Sutherland Cards. It's tough when you see breakers getting what seems like an unlimited supply, and I agree with that. Is Fanatics doing this, issue with the allocations because they would rather deal directly with breakers?
There is
a lot of
more
thoughts
to that, though, because a couple months ago, there were a bunch of smaller breakers that got a lot of their allocations from Fanatics cut off. So I think it's more of like those top breakers. And I mean, I could name them, but I think you know who they are. So.
Yeah. So it's again, breakers are probably the same way. It's a dog eat dog business. Not everybody's going to succeed. Some of the little guys are going to make it. Some of them aren't. But it's one of those things where I did have another thought. And you mentioned Manhattan, Rich. We have Bleecker Street Trading. Bleecker Trading has two shops in Manhattan, and they're pretty much the best shops in Manhattan. One is all the way downtown. The other one is up on the Upper West Side, I believe. And they're doing very, very well. I should also mention, for those watching, if you're in New York City, we are doing a vintage trade night at Bleecker Trading on, I believe it's Sunday the 15th. Sammy Thunder has a video on it. He did a really good promotional video on it. Sammy has done most of the work. I would say 99.8% of the work. And then, so, it's an exciting thing for us in a hobby shop to have For Collectors and Vintage Trade Night happen in New York City. So anyway, one thing I was thinking about was shows. The proliferation of shows means for me that I can go once a month and go to a big show and find the cards that I need without having to go to a hobby shop. What do you think about this, Brody, with the proliferation of shows? Is that going to hurt shops?
I think it's definitely possible, because I think, if you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, shows, I mean, there was the National and there were some decently big shows, but a lot of the shows have popped up since COVID. And I think, like you said, I don't live in Chicago, so I mean, I'm in a decent populated area, but there's shows everywhere. Like if I really wanted to, I could go to a show every weekend without probably within an hour of me. So I think it's
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
possible because when you go to a show too, I mean, for the most part, you see everything that you could get at a shop. You see wax, you see singles, supplies, even.
So, to your point, Rich, singles in card shops are not really a thing, and I'm a singles, for the most part, a singles buyer. So, shows are actually the better place.
Right. But one of the
Yeah,
problems with shows is also the ROI for your table space. And that's also
yeah,
the problem with singles in a store. And that's why I'm saying you don't over organize. You'll put all the Dallas Stars together. You put all the New York Giants together. You'll pull out the key stars and superstars and have them separate, but you don't over organize, but you have them organized. And instead, the vintage you have in numerical order, or if you don't have that many, you can have older cards in just the year order, and so somebody can work their way through it. But you're right for probably what you're looking for. And I think I've looked at some of your cards. You've showed me some of your cards in our chats, in these chats or chats before the show. What you're looking for will be available at the shows, but it's not available for everybody to do, because even some of these expensive modern cards, they end up in the dollar boxes or the $2 boxes or the $5 boxes. And I wanted to point out something. When I talked about the wax group of stores, the owner of that group is very conscious not to put any stores, I'm going to use the word stacked on top of each other. They have to be a minimum of 20 or 25 minutes away from the next store. He will not put a store 3 minutes away from another store. Another of his stores. There's been a couple cases where the stores have been close to other stores in the area, but never within his own group. And that's really all he looks at, and that's fine. Competition is competition. And like there's a case, I always talk about, there's a case where the person who did a singles type store in Dallas, but did it badly. It looked like a Blockbuster. It was a terrible looking idea. It was the right idea, but the wrong execution. They opened up about 5 minutes from there, and there's also a Jewish style deli in each of those strip malls, and they have the better strip, and they have, in my opinion, the better Jewish style deli too, where they open a new store. But that's a different subject for a different day. I always mention that when I'm on Dr. Beckett's podcast.
Make sure you have a good lunch near you.
Oh,
I know.
I tell you, they have. I sometimes go with my wife knows and says, "Hey, we're going." If I tell my wife we're going to Deli News, she goes, "You're going to the card store, aren't you?" Yeah, but I'm taking you to lunch, so bear with it. And we do that. But it's certainly, as I said, there's a market there. But, people are careful what they do. But it's certainly something to be cognizant of, because the other thing with a decent store, and that's why stores have trade night. You talked about Sammy Thunder and the trade night, and that's a great video he put out, by the way, since I saw it courtesy of the Net 54 boards. That trade nights and things stores do. Topps has the Topps Rip Night on February 21st. I've seen enough stores mention it, even though I couldn't find it on the Topps website, but I'm convinced it is the 21st. And that's a way to bring people into your store and bring a community. A store can bring community. When the person asked, a store can bring community into the area, where a show really can't bring the same community to a location. So that's why Zach says, to answer Zach's question, that's why you need a shop.
Yeah. I mean, it serves a purpose in the hobby that can't be served in other ways. And, I feel like there's an issue we didn't even talk about yet, which is that hobby shops have been getting robbed all over the country. There was one actually here in New York City. It was not a sports card shop. It was a Pokemon shop that got robbed literally in broad daylight, like gunpoint, as opposed to places that have been broken into in the middle of the night, things like that. So that's another thing that you have to deal with when you open a shop, is you have to deal with security. So we have the next topic for us is something that has sort of broken the news, and it's again SGC and Beckett were purchased by PSA. PSA has spoken about them. It was Ryan Hoge on a podcast. It's been all over the place. People have put in their 2 cents about it, and I thought we probably should also put in our 2 cents about it. I do want to call to people to one particular video which I thought was really good. It's by the channel Simon 466 Cards. Simon 466 Cards had a video which basically broke down all the data with regard to SGC and what they've been grading in their grading numbers, and basically said, what they said in that podcast was just not true, and here's why. And it's a terrific video. It's 10 minutes long, so it's worth your while. Simon 466 Cards, right? So my thought was, I am an SGC guy. I'm a vintage guy, almost exclusively, and I'm not one of those doom and gloom. SGC is going to be out of business in a year or whatever. But I don't like to see things going slower. I don't like to see the potential that their grading, which had been extremely predictable and I think really well done, might change. I don't like to see customer service people leave, all that kind of stuff. But it seems to me that what they are indicating is that SGC is going to live. It's not dead. But it's going to live in a very different universe from where it had been, and it's going to be pretty much all vintage cards. Which, hey, for me, that's fine. For the hobby and for the company itself, I don't know. Brody, thoughts on? Did you get a chance to see that? Maybe see some of the reaction videos on that?
Yeah, I did. It's tough. I mean, because we were talking about this with it being Monopoly when it first came out, but I do like that they're going to try to keep it different. And you're gonna PSA and Beckett and SGC, they're gonna be different. Let's just hope it works. That's gonna be the main thing.
Yeah. And Rich, I know you certainly have been paying attention to this.
Well,
thoughts?
I am, and so I'm sure probably 90% of the people know this, even though I haven't worked there for almost 2 decades. I am a Beckett alumnus.
Right.
So I still know quite a few people in the grading area. I know some other people still around the company. So, I always tell people to remember that when I speak about this, because I speak a little bit differently.
Yeah.
What Nat Turner did, one of the nicest, very classiest things when he first brought Beckett. And it happened to be that Dr. Beckett was going to be on Hobby Hotline 2 days later. And Nat went to his house and had lunch, the day after, after he spoke to the employees, then he went to meet with Dr. Beckett, which I thought was a very classy move on his point. They have, they have spoken before. So there was that. There's also a lot of things that it can do compared to even SGC. Nothing personal about SGC, and I say this is a Beckett alumni. But when I was there in the early '90s, Beckett was the force in the hobby. Beckett has a name among a certain group of generations, the people 30s, 40s, that SGC doesn't have. So that using that name is something they understand just how important being able to use that name is. So they're going to do what they can to keep it going. And I did see Steel City's thing. And honestly, I think that makes sense from PSA's viewpoint, because I think there's 2 different things. There's the registry, but there's the pop report. I would put a pop report in with make the pop report all 3, but the registry can stay PSA, and I think you can do something that way, where the pop report would be good because it'll show just how strong the whole PSA brand is and all. And it's the same thing. People are thinking there's monopolies, and I want to go on that little tangent for a second. As long as Upper Deck has hockey, even though that's the fourth major sport, how are you going to, there's no way in the world anybody would ever say that's a true monopoly. You can say they dominate the market, but it's not a true monopoly. Whether the FTC looks at that, I don't know. And it's the same thing for grading. CGC has a very strong financial background. Some of the same people who back CGC back Fanatics. And, I forget the equity group name, but it's the same one. So CGC's got a lot of things. In fact, I saw just before I went on the air, CGC is doing something PSA has done. And in a store in Rochester, New York, they're going to have a CGC rep there. I would not be surprised to see more CGC in-person things too. So I think this monopoly talk is good, where it's good to bring it up, but I don't think it's going to stick. And so I wanted to say that. But I also want to say that I think that it's a good time to be grading the hobby. How many months is PSA behind? I was at the Dallas Card Show. Yeah. When I saw the Jeff Wilson video, he was right. One of his friends was online for 3 hours Thursday night, mind you. Thursday night, which is which is night only open to all access VIPs and vendors. People waited online for 3-4 hours to submit cards to Beckett. That's a brilliant, and even though they raised the price of raw card review from 25 to 65, they were more crowded than ever before.
Really? Is that right? I thought the lines were for a regular grading, not for the raw card review. People paid $65. I'm
going to say that, but people complained about the raw card review.
Yeah, they should.
Right.
I mean, I think
that is a big jump. But having said that, the lines were so long that if they were there just for grading, and remember, the Beckett corporate headquarters is 15 to 20 minutes away from the Dallas Card Show. So even if they're not grading in the building, it's an easy commute, because I live 10 minutes from the Dallas Card Show, and the Beckett headquarters is 5 minutes from me. You're talking a 15 to 20 minute drive. You can just shuttle those cards.
Yeah, I mean, the card show thing is has its advantages. What was I? My mind wanders. I'm thinking, I don't know. I feel like what they did, the things they said about Beckett were actually pretty good. We're going to tinker with the label a little bit. We're going to fix this and that. With the SGC though, they pretty much lied. SGC is really doing a lot more vintage. Well, percentage-wise, they're doing vintage, but if you look at their overall numbers, and this is Simon's point, they're doing less vintage now than they did 6 months ago also. And it's one of those things where I wish they would just be more honest with us. So that's all. Bro, do you have anything else to add on this one before we move on to topic number 3?
I mean, I think you're definitely right, though, because I used to only see pretty much vintage and SGC stuff, and I see modern stuff and SGC slabs all the time these days. Lots of modern cards in their slabs.
So we have a third topic, which is a cool topic. It's not controversial at all, unless you don't like Ken Golden. So Ken Golden brought to market this card. It's a new Wagner. It's called the Shields Family Collection. They have like direct provenance for it, pulled out of a pack by a long-term collector from like 100 years ago, and it stayed in the Shields family for years. And it just got graded. They hid it from the pop report, which is a whole different story, which we won't get into. But it's now on Golden. Last I checked, it was at like 3.75 million. I don't know if there's any damage to the slab since when he was on TV, Ken Golden dropped the slab on the desk at MSNBC. It's a whole other story. And so this one is up. But it's gotten a lot of media attention, and he's been all over TV and wherever else, putting it out. But it's an active auction right now. But what did come up this week is that there's now going to be a second Wagner up. This is not a new one, but rather one with very well-known provenance. This is the Garagiola Wagner. And for us old guys, Rich, I'm sorry, we're old guys. We know who Joe Garagiola is. He was a player in the 1950s and 40s and 50s. In fact, he was on the 46 Cardinals that won the World Series. His last season was 54 with the Giants. He was after his career was all over the media. He was an announcer for NBC baseball games. He guest hosted the Tonight Show. He had some game shows. He wrote books. He was a media thing. He was kind of like Bob Uecker before Bob Uecker was Bob Uecker, a catcher who joked about his own career. But I think he was a little not as quite as funny as Uecker. But anyway, Garagiola, and I read the story on this, acquired this Wagner by trade. And one of the things that he traded was his 1954 Giants uniform. He didn't play in the World Series, but he played for the Giants that year. And of course, the Giants won the World Series. And Joe Garagiola was in uniform in the clubhouse, looking through the windows to see Willie Mays' catch, the catch over his shoulder and with his back to home plate. And Garagiola is in the picture looking at him, looking at his eyes. And so he sold that uniform. He traded that uniform and a bunch of other stuff to get this Wagner. Garagiola lived until about the age of 90, passed away, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago. His son is still involved in baseball. He's an announcer for the Arizona Diamondbacks. And I think even his grandson now is an announcer. But so this Garagiola card came back to Heritage. It was sold through Heritage several years ago, but it's back on Heritage in their March auction. So, Rich, you know who Garagiola is, right?
Yeah, well, there's, you brought up a couple of really good points on Garagiola. One, his rookie year is the 46 Cardinals. I believe he has 4 hits in a World Series game, which is still tied for most by a rookie in a World Series game. His last team is the 54 Giants. How many players have their first and last season with a World Championship team? Yeah. I know Joe DiMaggio is another one, and there's got to be some others, but that's kind of a fun trivia thing. Second, you're right about the announcers. And this is a personal fun story. In 1999, I went to the Sabre convention in Arizona. And my good friend Lou Lips had Sabre Sabre gets big group of tickets to the game. So they were in Siberia. Lou knew I was coming in for the Sabre convention. He says, "You want to sit with me?" And I go, "Sure, Lou, I guarantee your tickets are much better." So we went to the Sabre game on a Friday night. Randy Johnson was 14 strikeouts away from 2,000. He got it. From 2,500. He got it. Yeah. He pitched like a one-hitter. A guy named Jose Jimenez, no relation to Bill Dana, and you really have to be old to know that reference. Decided that night he'd pitch a no-hitter. And one day I was sitting at my computer at home, and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, "Oh, 1999 Diamondbacks, Cardinals, or whatever it is." And it's the game. I said, Garagiola announced the game and it was great to hear his voice announcing that game of the no-hitter I saw in person. Yeah. And so that's just a really cool, fun story of how I saw a no-hitter. And years later, I got to see Garagiola, one of the voices of my youth, because he's a former Yankees announcer. And when I started following baseball, Garagiola was doing Yankees games. He originally started doing Cardinals games and moved to New York. And it's fun. And Garagiola was a baseball card collector, and I sent it in our chat if you want to post it. He had a good relationship with Cy Berger, and there's a Joe Garagiola Topps card done later in his later in his career, as part of like his business card. So I put an eBay link to a signed card of that in our chat.
I'd have to put it from my. I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
You can figure it out, but if you want to post
I'll figure out how to send this. I could just show it in the phone. That's the easiest. So there's a Joe Garagiola card on eBay. It's a 1973 style card. By 73, Garagiola, I think, was announcing NBC games by then.
Correct. Well, he was actually doing the pregame show. Kurt Gowdy was still doing the announcing of. I think he may have been doing the secondary games, but Joe was definitely with NBC at that time.
Okay, here we go. This is actually really good. Chat vote Garagiola Wagner or Golden Wagner, and I won't go back to the Golden. Shields collection's got the crease. It's got some really nice color on it. The back is really clean. This one has known provenance. Front is pretty good. The back is completely trashed. I'd rather have the Garagiola, to be honest with you. Yeah, this is what I was going to say. Brody, I'm sorry, we brought you on the show, and I've been doing all the talking, and Uncle Rich has been doing all the talking. Tell us about anything you want to add on the Wagners, because we have another topic to move to after this. But go ahead.
No, yeah, I think it's pretty cool that we see these old cards from former players. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I think between the two, I kind of like the SGC slab for the Wagner. I'm not sure why, but it feels like it just fits that T206 style. And I think I agree with you. The crease on the PSA one, I'd rather have the clean front than the clean back.
Yeah. And, this coloring issues may probably almost certainly related to the pictures, how the pictures are taken and the lighting of the pictures. Couple of things about Garagiola. One, Kudalev brought this up. He was the second best player from the street he grew up on. The backstory there is he grew up in the hill section of St. Louis. His across the street neighbor was Yogi Berra. And Yogi Berra and he were close friends for their entire lives. Both of them lived, fortunately, into their 90s. And Garagiola was scouted as the better player and was scouted first. He was bigger and probably looked more athletic, and Yogi didn't look like a great hitter, although he was one of the best of all time. And so Yogi actually became the better player, even though he was scouted less. But the two of them were, like I said, friends for life, and that's what that means. The second best player on his street. There was one other thing. Garagiola was a tanker in World War II. And he came back in 46 was his rookie year. So that, that's, a great American hero. We can start naming our kids Yogi again. Oh, yeah, that's true. The Garagiola one has passed around a little bit. I think Garagiola died in maybe like 2010, maybe a little after that. But this is the second time that it's been on Heritage. So it's been passed around a little bit at this point. So it's one other card I want to show. And doesn't look like much. But wait, did we lose Brody? Oh, we lost Brody. Did he get mad at us for talking too much? Oh well. This card is a Pop 1, and it's Mickey Mantle, and it's the 1960 Venezuelan Topps tattoo of Mickey Mantle. I know that there is one Pop 1 Venezuelan Topps tattoo of Roberto Clemente, which has been out for a couple of years now, but this just came to the United States. It is going to be in the Heritage auction in March. It doesn't look like much, but I have no idea how much it's going to go for. A new to the market Pop 1 playing days Mickey Mantle item has got to be something that people are going to be after. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look like much, but 7 figures possible, Uncle Rich.
You have yeah, it's possible because the card is so difficult that who knows. And I mean, but I don't make predictions on cards. I learned that lesson in 1991. New York Magazine called me because at the time the Honus Wagner market was significant but pretty stable, you know, would go up X amount. And they asked me what I thought the PSA 8 Wagner would go for. I said, 150 to 200,000. I was only off by half of what it really went for. Yeah. And from that point on, I don't make predictions. So yeah. I'll just say this is a really cool card. It's going to go for a lot of money. It's slabbed. You have Mantle collectors. You have type collectors. They're off to the races.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the last thing you said, yeah, you have Mantle collectors. So, I mean, there are Mantle collectors who probably have everything, and they're probably it only takes 2 guys to bid this up to 7 figures, and 2 guys with a lot of money and a big collection and the need to flex their muscles. They have everything, because if you don't get this, you don't have every Mantle, and there's probably guys out there who do. And so at this point, I don't know. I can say this. I knew about this coming into the United States for a couple months. I have nothing to do with it at all, except that I know the guy who brought it in. And he promised us all the secrecy. And even though I have a big mouth, I actually was secret about this. I only mentioned it publicly after Heritage came. I saw this before it was graded. It's been graded very recently. It came back from PSA, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. And the family in Venezuela wants to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. That country is going through great turmoil, has been going through great turmoil over the last decade or so. There are safety concerns, obviously. But it took a great amount of courage for both the family in Venezuela and my friend here in the United States to bring this to market. And I hope for their sake that it does as well as we hope we think it might. So that's something. It's got a great backstory behind it, although I can't say much more than what I said now. It's got a great backstory behind it. It is literally a pop one. There may never be another one. And Mantle collectors are, like most super collectors, crazy people. So we'll see what happens. And I am very much looking forward to tracking it. Don't think I'm going to bid on it. You never know. So, yep, it's backwards, but that's the tattoo. No, this is not true. I actually know the guy who brought it into the United States personally, and he's in a private chat that I've been in for several years, and I've talked to him many times, and he's a terrific gentleman, and wants to avoid publicizing also because, frankly, there is a history in the hobby of people in the hobby taking advantage of the people in Venezuela and other countries, and lowballing them and then making tons of money off of them when the cards come to this country. So he's very conscious of treating these people with respect. So that's where it is. Yes, I've never been to Venezuela.
Well, my good old friend John Ramirez and some of his friends went to Venezuela almost 50 years ago and bought a whole bunch of cards back in those days. And I don't, they probably paid fair for the time. And, if you understand, if they bought cards in the late 70s and early 80s, cards were not the monetary things they are now. So they probably paid reasonably well at the time. But in today's world, it is not fair the way it was. Plus, I have a friend of mine in Houston who actually was the first person who got most of the 67 first series cards. There's like 3 series, and that actually was an old friend of mine. And I was at Beckett and I got all the checklists from John, and then I got the 67 checklist from him of the first cards that included a Davey Concepcion pre-rookie card, a Bobby Cox Hall of Famer pre-rookie card. And so those are some really cool cards. Again, I do not know how fair it was they paid, and I want to stress that, because the card market was not where it is today when it comes to dollars. So if I told you that I sold Pete Rose rookies for a quarter in 1979, and that was double what they were worth at the time, that is true. Is that fair today? No. Was that fair in 1979? Of course. So, cards sell for what cards sell for. So we have to be careful when we say, did they pay fair? But a card like this, the fact that they got it out of the country in these difficult situations is, and I was looking on Net 54, and a few other cards have been discovered as well from that set. There is a recent thread about some new discoveries to the Venezuelan Topps tattoo sets, and that's just a cool.
That is true. There will be more coming in. No more Mantles, but there will be more coming in. I didn't know that was public information, but obviously When I said that there's a history of taking advantage of, I'm not your friends. Back 50 years ago, nobody knew that Venezuelan cards were going to be what they are now, and obviously they knew they were low pop and they were interesting and they had historical significance and the cards were nice and they offered different variations of cards we were familiar with. So I don't throw stones at those people who 50 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever. But in recent times, there have been people who have been taken advantage of, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of it or the countries or whatever.
Yeah, that's true. As long as we've been in the hobby, Jeff Wilson actually, since I had nothing to do yesterday, I watched a lot of content, and Jeff Wilson told about a story about a guy at a Chicago show who found a really tough Shohei Ohtani heritage rookie, with like a red name, sitting in the guy's showcase as a common heritage Ohtani rookie. And that's like a $500 card. The guy had it $75, and he ended up telling the dealer that it was the right thing. I think some of that's a matter of circumstances, but the guy also said, it depends on the circumstance, who it is, where you can do, you want to win in this game, but how fair do you want to win? And that's a tough thing. I want to show you a card. And I bought this as part of a lot. I went through this for the dealers. And I will tell you, as I'm going through this, the dealer told me as I'm going through this, and this is just one example, the dealer told me there'll probably be high numbers in these bargain boxes. So with full disclosure that he knew that he had probably screwed up, I'll try to put it, here it is. I bought about 10 of these at the show. This is a 61 high number card.
High number. Yep.
Okay, they were in his dollar box.
Yeah.
He did not ask. And he was telling to me, there may be high numbers in the box as I'm pulling out a 61 high number. I go, yeah, Kevin, there are high numbers in these boxes. And that was accepted going in, and he knows that there may have been some high numbers, and he was okay with that. But if it was...
It happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was set up at a show. I had a very good show, which may have affected why I was so nice about it. But I had put some cards in. Some new inventory had come in, and I had, put some cards in the wrong spot. And somebody pointed out to me, said, "You sure you want this in here?" And I said, "It's in there. You found it. Good for you. You going through, if you're digging through dollar boxes, if you're grinding it, and you find the card that's worth more than $1, or $5 or whatever, that's, to me, that's fair game. So that's not taking advantage of somebody. I'm talking about, something.
No, I know. It's like if you get somebody coming into your store with cards from the 60s and you offer them 1% of what they're worth.
Yeah,
that's really more what you're talking about. I get that totally. So, but even in our world, there are people who know how to find stuff that people miss. And, there's a certain level where you say it's okay. And there's a certain level where you say, I better tell the person. I've told this story. I'm going through Joe Davis's Got baseball cards, dollar boxes, the National. I'm looking. There's a 68 McCormick white letter in there.
Yeah.
That's the toughest that may be the toughest 68 variation.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna find, and a friend of mine says this. When we shop for cards, we're not looking for bargains. We're looking for mistakes.
Right. We're looking for, well, this was so good. And Joe's an old friend of mine. And I had the angel and devil on the shoulder. I told him we worked it out. He actually took the card, sent it to PSA, and we ended up splitting the proceeds.
Well, this Mike's got the thing here. Your dollar boxes, when you set them up, you put the best card in front, and sometimes it's a little bit of a nugget, so that people are like, "Oh, that's what's in here."
When I was running my old synagogue show, and there are people who still know that we had the island of misfit toys, where it was stuff that was too big, I always tried to put a couple better things in there. Even though this was boxes, hey, go through the island of misfit toys, takes as much as you want. I always tried to put something better in there so people would keep digging. And after every show, anything that wasn't taken, I said, okay, whatever's left is going in the recyclable bin, because nobody wanted that. Worked out really well.
Or they stay in, and sometimes, hey, they stay in. I sold cards 2 weeks ago that I had for a year in those spots. I'm like, hey, finally got rid of this one. But somebody did have a good point. I think it might have been Bob Boozle. And my point is, Rich, how much free time do you have on your hands if you're actually watching Jeff Wilson? I mean,
I'm listening. Understand, I am listening. I'm doing other things, but I have it on as background. I listen to some of the four collectors too. I don't consider, when I say I watch, I should rephrase that. I listen. And if a lot of times I listen at work, I usually listen to old radio air checks at work. When I'm at work, but I was off yesterday, I was off today, and I'm not doing anything. So I was actually watching some videos too. And Jeff, I know a lot of people don't like him. I know he's a lightning rod. Jeff's opened a lot of businesses in his life. He's very business savvy. He's very, very savvy when it comes to communication. Is he perfect? He admits about his mistakes. And no, he doesn't know what everybody knows, but he's still learning all these years, and he will learn until the day he dies. And I have a lot of respect for what he has done, how he's created a monster store where he is. He's created a monster store, and he travels the country. He does a great job. Rob Veras has been in this business 30 some odd years. He knows his business. He's also created a mega store. All these places, and I want to switch topics for a second. This isn't in our list of topics, but something came up. I saw it on Facebook. We got
improvise. Go for it.
Okay. And here's something interesting. I didn't read the whole thing. I saw a note on Facebook. How has the hobby changed in the last 10 years? And I think it was on Sports Card Nonsense Group, and I didn't really read, but there was a great comment. And it's one I agree with. I used to be able to go into my local card store, and the boxes had a pretty stable thing. $60, $80, $100 were your base boxes. A couple $100 were your better boxes, and then there'd be an occasional box off the roof. Now, $200 for the most part, with a few exceptions, is your basic box, unless you buy like a blaster box. And Fanatics, to their credit, does offer stores many of the blaster boxes that you see at the Targets and the Walmarts of the world. But that's been a sea change, and it's hard for me too, because I don't buy very many boxes anymore. I buy packs. It's one of the most important changes in the business, where the barrier to entry of collecting has gone way up. And I think that's a bit of a problem for everything. And I'd love to hear your opinion too.
I mean, I feel like there was a point here that the hobby hasn't changed that much. The industry or the business of it has changed a lot. And you know, I wish there was that, you know, dichotomy where you could, you know, have a wall in the middle between the two of them. But I think I don't think it's that clean and clear a delineation between what's the hobby and what's the industry, because my hobby is affected by the prices of the cards. Every one of these cards behind me is worth a lot more than it was 10 years ago. So you're talking about, you know, what causes the prices to go up. Some of it has to do with new product. Some of it has to do with the apps. Some of it has to do with, you know, flippers getting in. Some of it has to do with, you know, people understanding, you know, scarcity. And it's, I think in many respects, the hobby changed because it had to change. And because at some point, you know, people get into the business and they put money into it. And anytime a business has money put into it, things become more expensive. So this is interesting. Cards HQ was the only shop in Atlanta that treated me fairly on the cards I took to sell. The others tried to do the Venezuelan taking advantage Dan was talking about. Yeah. And that's a real thing. And, you know, look, I've been I was in the hobby in the late 70s. I went to card shows when I was a teenager, and I was collecting vintage.
I probably saw you at those card shows.
Certainly. Although mostly Long Island. You were a Jersey guy, I was a Long Island guy. So I would go to Nassau Coliseum and Plainview back when it was Plainview show, and other shows at hotels and stuff. But
my old friends Charlie Splatanik and Dennis Weintraub running those shows.
Yeah, probably. But my point is, I felt like I was being taken advantage of multiple times. And so the hobby has always had its terrible bad actors, it's always had its questionable guys, and it's always had its guys who were, you know, 100%. And I remember guys like that too, who were so happy that I was collecting vintage cards as a 15-year-old, that they were treating me with great respect and with, you know, and treating me better than they were treating their other customers. So there was that too. So to say that Jeff in his store treats his customers fairly, I like to hear that. Honestly, I don't think he really has an option, because if he did you know, the magnifying glass is on him, and if he screwed somebody, it would be all over YouTube in a day. And, you know, he'd have to do a apology video or whatever. So he has to be on the up and up. And, you know, but, you know, to say that he is and he treated you more fairly than other stores, you know, I like that. And is Jeff the worst person in the world? No. I wish I have very different opinions from you, Rich, in some respects with respect to Jeff. I wish he was more open about, you know, I wish he was more open, generally speaking. I wish he was more knowledgeable. I wish
he has certain connections you and I don't have. Having said that, I have a lot of respect for what he's built, and we'll leave it at that. But, you know, when you mentioned Jeff, and you mentioned, you know, we're talking about how he purchased cards, one of the underrated things is that if you showed to Al Rosen you knew your stuff, because Al's business was doing resells to other vendors, but there was a time where, don't kid yourself, you know, when Al Rosen was on top of the world in the late 80s, he was probably paying more for collections than anyone else. And it's the exact same reason. The microscope was on him. And so he knew he had to pay more. You know, Rob Veras, you know, he talks about his son Ryan and Ryan's team. They sit there and they have a buying station. They buy certain days of the week. And I mean, and they're very open with the people they buy from too. So at that level, it is very good.
And, you know, there's particularly with Cards HQ, this is Zach's point is good. It's like, it's also good for business. More people are going to walk in the door if they think they're going to be treated fairly. And if you have a high profile, then that's good for business. And, you know, so more power to them. And if they are treating people fairly and they're running their business in the right way, then I don't have any you know, problem with them at all. I just wish, like I said, he had does more research when it comes to his.
I get that. Jeff is still learning. I will give him that. He doesn't know what you and I know. Then again, he doesn't have the 50 years of experience in the business you and I know.
Yeah. So we're at an hour. Uncle Rich, it has been a absolute pleasure. I'm sure we will do another one again. I put a message in our chat. I hope Brody's okay. He kind of left us quickly there. I don't think we did anything to offend him. I don't think that's what it was.
In
Hopefully
fact, you
he's
were
feeling
making
okay.
sure that he always sent all the questions to Brody first.
Yeah.
So I mean, he
think,
had plenty of chances. So I don't feel that bad.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what. I think he might just not be feeling well, and I'm just hope he's okay. And I put a message in for John to reach out and see if he's okay. But Chad, it was terrific. We went up into the 60s in terms of numbers. Questions were terrific. A lot of the guys here, obviously, we know. But I will be, I guess, I'm doing Four Collectors Live a week from tomorrow. So that's next time you'll see me, Uncle Rich. I'm sure you'll be on a Hobby Hotline. If you have anything else you want to talk about,
I'm scheduled with Orlando from the on the 14th next month.
Oh, awesome! And I know you did a show with Matt, Straight Race Cards.
Yes,
maybe a week or two ago.
As I pointed out, the show I did with Matt, that was basically just a taped conversation of what we normally talk about in person, except we delved a little deeper into each of our backgrounds. But for the most part, that's literally what our lunches are like. It was just done. It was just taped.
And what's great about that channel and Matt, and I've started to get to know him a little better, and he's been really supportive of my channel, is that that's what those shows are. And I think that they're fantastic. Just sitting down, talking to people about who they are and letting them talk about their hobby experience, but also letting them talk about their lives and how it intersects with the hobby. And, I think all of those sessions are almost like two friends just sitting there talking and good friends and
that's
good people.
Really
and that's why I think that's been a very successful series, and I hope he continues it.
That's really what it was in our case, and he's right. He found me on Net 54. He loves old vintage cards, and where I was working at the time, there was a coffee shop a couple of hundred steps. You want to meet for coffee? I'll pick it up. Oh, sure. I've never been there. Let's go. And it was like, okay, I'm meeting a collector in a coffee shop, for crying out loud. What could be better? And and he's
better than that.
He's a good kid, and I'm very happy, and it's worked. And I love the fact that he has focus, and he's switched a couple times. But I love that he knows what he always has a game plan and knows what he wants to do.
Awesome. So Laura's point is well taken. Many of us are going to be affected by some pretty crazy weather this weekend. We already talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but please, people, hobby people, friends, family, stay safe. Stay inside if you have to. Don't overexert yourself if you have to do snow plowing or snow, shoveling. Just be well and be safe. Same thoughts to you, Uncle Rich, and hopefully Brody's okay.
Thank you. I am inside until I think I am inside until Tuesday.
It's been a great hobby hotline, and thanks again, Rich, for your contributions, which are immeasurable and, of course, invaluable. And the chat has been terrific. So, folks, we're going to play the outro, and we're going to say goodbye to next weekend. Next Sunday at 11. No, I'm sorry, Saturday at 11 a.m. Hobby Hotline, Must Watch TV. Take care, guys.